Okay, we're going to install DNS for a domain name server. First I need to copy this so I can get a hold of Webmin. So I'm going to paste this using wget to download the proper files I need from a server. Note I had to become root to do this. So I typed in su space or su space password in order to become root user. Here you can see and it's installing and downloading. So again, the command was wget and it was http://www.webmin.com/jcameron-key.ask. Alright, we need this in order to download the package. Then we do an rpm space -- import jcameron-key.ask. So this way we actually have the key installed. Then we can remove the key after it's installed with an rm space -f to force, so we don't have to say yes to it, jcameron-key.ask. And that removes it from the actual directory when we downloaded it. Remember, it's already been installed with the import key command here, so it's not like it's disappearing from the system. It's just we're cleaning up afterwards here with this rm command. Now the wget is http://prdownloads.sourceforge.net, and then we're going /webmin/webmin-1.600-1.noarch.rpm. So this is the Webmin application, and noarch means it doesn't have an architecture, so it's not i386, i586, i686, AMD64, none of that stuff. It's just noarch, which means it runs on everything because it's a script-based language, and this is done with the web development. So basically you're doing your network administration through a web page with web development, and that's why it can run as a script. And then we're going to run at the prompt here. It's rpm space -u space webmin -1600-1.noarch.rpm, and this upgrades and installs it. So if it wasn't already there, it installs it. If it was already there, it installs it to this version. And then we need to download another one. This is the wget http://prdownloads.sourceforge.net/webmin webadmin/user-min-1.520-1.noarch.rpm, and that will download the user min, which will allow any user to access Webmin instead of just root. So if you need that capability, that's how you do it. And then we need to install the user min. So we say rpm space -u space user min -1.520-1.noarch.rpm. And so when we run each one of these commands at the prompt in this order, it will install the necessary packages. Alright, now with that said, let's have a look at where we left off. Alright, and this is where I'm at now. Because I ran all those other commands, when I copy and pasted them, it kind of took off and did a bunch of them. At this point I can do rpm-U for upgrade, and user, I'm not going to type the whole thing. I'm just going to go ahead and hit tab for it to fill out the rest of it for me, and then I can just run this. But it's already installed, so I really don't have to worry about it. So with this, my applications are in place, and I now have Webmin. Now that I have Webmin, I need to install a few other things though first. I need to install Bind. Bind is the DNS server on Linux. It's open source. They're on version 9 now, and it's quite powerful. Basically, what DNS does is converts a address name like www.google.com to an IP address. And that's what it does, because we cannot actually look up a website based on the name. We can only look it up based on the IP address, but it's kind of difficult to remember all the IP addresses out there in the world, so it's a lot easier to remember a name that then gets translated into an IP address. So we need a DNS server to do that, and that's what we're creating. So we're going to say yum here. I'm going to say install with 2 L's -y, and we're going to say bind. And then this will install the bind DNS server. Alright, I already have installed mine, so it's no big deal. But if you haven't, there you go. And you shouldn't have already, so this should be new to you right here. Alright, so a couple things we need to do. Probably need to do a systemctl space enable space named, since that is the name of the bind server is named, and then service. Enter, and that's all on one line. Okay. Now, with that said, we need to edit a file. One of the files we need to edit is our resolve file. The reason we need to edit this file is because basically we need to point to our own server. Traditionally, I'll show you what I mean. Traditionally, you point to whatever your ISP's DNS servers are, and then those ISPs are what resolves your DNS for you. So when you go to look up like www.google.com, your ISP has a DNS server that converts www.google.com to the IP address for you on your behalf. But since we're setting up our own DNS servers, we need to point to ourselves so that we can resolve our own IP addresses. In order to do this, I need to set these servers first and foremost here. We're going to be making up some DNS names that wouldn't exist out in the world so we don't get a conflict, and thus this is going to be impossible for these other DNS servers down below to create. Now, I did an ifconfig before I pulled this up, and I'll show you that in just a second. Actually, let me show you that right now. If I do ifconfig, check it out, we can actually see, let me bring this down a little bit. Alright, there we go. That displays a little better. Anyways, you can easily see that here's my loopback in IPv4 address. So realize that inet means IPv4. Here's my net mask, and then here's my inet6, which is IPv6 address, and here's the IPv6 address for that. But I also have my VMware set up in bridge mode, so I'm actually getting the IP address from the router here. And so this is my actual IP address for the router. So it took care of both of them. You can also see my net mask for that. So it took care of both of them by then calculating. And here's my IPv6. Not calculating, but by putting in both addresses into my resolve, I make sure that I resolve with my local DNS server and not with the other DNS servers. Since I'm putting it first, that matters. So something I need to do here. Okay. In a real world scenario, you would probably have an IP address that you get from your ISP with a static IP address, meaning that it doesn't change over time. You have to pay extra money for that, and you'd have like something like a T1 or a T3 line or something like that, fiber connection, running to your company, and then you'd have your address basically registered with ICANN, and ICANN is the whole International Name Association for DNS. And from that, you would then create the address, your DNS server, and then ICANN would point to your DNS server with your IP address, static IP address from your ISP. Now, in order to make sure that you are not resolving with the other DNS servers, you would comment these out. So any of the name servers here, like this, below it, that came from your ISP, you would have to comment those out to test your DNS server. Now, in our case, since we're doing one that doesn't exist, then it's not possible for these lower three here from the ISP in order to actually resolve. It's impossible. It won't happen. Can't happen because it doesn't exist on the internet. It wasn't created by ICANN so therefore it's not supported. So basically our IP addresses for our DNS server will resolve it properly. So we need to put in our loopback, so we're going to put name server in there. We're going to say 127.0.0.1, and then we're going to do our actual bridged IP address that we got from the router. And in this case, for me, it's 192.168.1.10. Now you'll need to put the one that you got from the router when you did the ifconfig and not mine. Because if you put mine here, it won't work. But if you put yours, it will work type thing. So make sure you put yours there and not mine. I'm going to hit escape now. I hit I in order to go into edit mode to type that in the first place. I'm just going to say Shift-ZZ. Now it's important that I do not restart my network service, because if I do, it'll auto-generate and wipe out those two IP address entries I put in there for the DNS servers for my own server. So when I put in name server 127.0.0.1 and name server space 192.168.1.10, that will get wiped out when it creates the file, because it creates the file on the fly and gets the information from the ISP, and resolved is generated every time we start up the network service. So therefore, the moment we restart the computer, it will wipe that out. We have to go in and add another file to prevent resolve from updating from the ISP in order to sidestep that. I'm not getting into that right now. In order to prevent that from happening. I'm not really worried about it because I'm just trying to test here to see if I get this working or not. Also, if you just restart the network service without restarting the whole computer, that will also wipe it out, because essentially when you restart a computer, you are restarting the network service, and that is what wipes out the file. So anyways, with that all said and done, now that we have our resolve in there for our, have our DNS address that's going to point to our DNS server on the resolve.conf file, then we're going to be able to essentially resolve our DNS entries, and we can make this happen. So that's absolutely essential that we do that first. Okay, so I'm going to come in here, and what you're going to type is https://localhost.localdomain:10,000. So once you type that in, then you can get to Webmin, and this will take you to Webmin, and it'll ask you to log in. For the user, you're going to put root, and then the password is going to be password, and then you're going to click login, and then it's going to ask you if you want to have a security key. You're going to say put in add exception to it, say confirm, and then this view will come up here. Let's see if I can't. Yeah, hold on a second. Maybe I can show this. Hold on a second. Yes. Okay, so you should get something like this here, and then it's just a matter of logging in. And if you want, you can check this. Remember, log in permanently, and then click login. And it just comes right up like this. And so you should have this screen here. Now, if I come over here to my server, I can then click on bind DNS. Under servers, bind DNS server. And then now we have these entries here. So this is this wonderful setup. It's got quite a bit of tools here that are really powerful, but this lets you graphically alter your server. Now, it's important to note that you can graphically, from a whole other computer, configure your Linux server with it while the Linux server is running in run level 3. So there's no need to actually go in through command line and do this. Now, matter of fact, I did this some months ago, and Webmin did not work inside of Fedora 17, but I've now managed to get it to work, and I guess they might have made some changes to make things work. Don't know, but we're going to have to do some special commands because we can't expect everything to work right out of the box in Webmin, since there was all these changes made to Red Hat. So that's important to note, and we're going to take that into consideration. Okay, so I'm going to come in here. I'm going to say create master zone. So we got a couple different zones we can do. We can do a cache server, a master server, and a slave server. Master server is your main server. You must have at least one master server. It's required. And then the other thing. Okay, so first off, before I get talking too much, let's create our domain and network address here. So with that said, let's call it, how about my serve for server dot let's do dom for domain. So my server dom, my serve dom, or let's do my server dot dom because that's easier to deal with. And then here I want to do an ns1 dot my server dot dom, like that. And what that is our ns, which is our name server, aka our DNS server for our master server. This is the name of our master server. A lot of times we'll say ns1, meaning that's the first name server, means the first DNS server. You could call it DNS1 if you liked. Dot my server dot dom, whatever you want to call it, it's fine. Just make sure that you have something there. Okay, now we're going to say student here, and it's going to be at, and we're going to say my server dot dom. And I also like doing dom because it doesn't exist on the internet. You can't go www.something dom and then actually get to a web page. So by just doing a .dom here, it can't possibly conflict with the internet, which is great because that's kind of what I want. Right, we don't have to put an IP address for template records if we don't want to. And I don't feel compelled to do so. Make sure this add ns record to master for master is in here because that's required. And this needs to be set to automatic, and this needs to be set to forward because we're going to be creating a forward where we go from the name to the IP address. And that's the order in which we're doing it. Okay. After that, just go with the defaults. This will work for our demo purposes. You would tweak these values if you want to get a certain performance set up for whatever it is you're wanting to do. And that's your SOA or Startup Authority. Here's our address. Now we need to put in our addresses. Basically what we're going to be doing here the whole time is saying we're going to convert this name to an IP address and this IP address to this name, and that's it. And that's basically all we're doing. And it's a whole lot of pop and circumstance, but it's basically saying the same thing over and over and over again. Now, since we're doing all our servers on one computer, you have to realize you're going to have to keep making the server the same computer each time. So, if you remember right, my name for my server was my server.dom, and we're going to put a dot at the end. And this is because this is an actual address. And actual addresses always have a dot at the end. So we need to do that too. And so I'm going to do my server dot dom dot, and then we're going to have to put an IP address for this. So 192.168.1.110. Now you're going to put where your IP address is, but my IP address this time is 192.168.1.110. So make sure you put yours in that you got from the ifconfig earlier. Okay, with that said, we're going to update and reverse with yes. Just leave it as default right there. It's correct already. Say create. Awesome. Let's do our next one. I'm going to make this one relative, meaning I can just say www like this, and I don't have to do anything else, and I don't say dot anything afterwards. And it's automatically going to connect it up with this domain because it's a relative address. And then I'm just going to paste back in. Oh, I can't. Sorry. Guess I won't be doing that. See if I can make that go a little faster. 192.168.1.110. Again, put your IP address that you got from the ifconfig for your bridged mode. Click create. Awesome. Okay. Now from there, we did another one too. Now remember we did ns1, and that points to our own computer. So we have to do ns1 also because that is the name server, because this computer is the name server and not some other computer we must also put in the address for our NS1 here. Again, it's also relative, and so we're going to go ahead and put our 192 here again. Again, put your address. It should just like pop up for you. Click create. Alright, and then one more we're going to have to do, because again, instead of our mail server being off on another computer, it's on this computer. So because of that, we're going to also have to put in our mail server too for this computer, so it will resolve properly. Alright, and again, it's also relative, so there's no dots and we don't fill out the rest. And again, 192. And then again, put your address instead there. And we're going to click create. Okay, so now we have 4 different names all pointing to the same IP address because it's this computer. So essentially we're going to have 4 different servers, and we need to resolve for each one of those servers. And that's what we're doing here. We have 3 relative addresses, www, ns1, and mail, and then we have a regular domain name here. This is great so that people can type in different values. If you have a particularly big network server, you may have other servers than www, like maybe video or I don't know, myserver.dom, etc., etc., etc. So you get the idea. You can have lots of different ones. All right, now we're going to click on this return to records. Record types. Return to record types, as it says afterwards. And it takes us back to here, where we have our name server because it was generated earlier when we filled out our information in the beginning. So we don't need to do anything there. We do need to fill out our mail server. So again, we need to put in our name, and that was myserv. And I believe we take the dot off on this one. And then the mail server is going to be mail.myserver.dom. And let's set the priority to 10. Okay, great. And now we already know that mail.myserver.dom points to an IP address because we did that over in the a second ago when we set up the addresses. So it's good. We can use the name and it's okay. It'll get resolved to the actual IP address. So this is great. It's more flexible because then you can just adjust the actual IP addresses in one place, and then everything else updates because it's all based on names afterwards. So it means you do less work and less editing and less chance for mistakes if you use names throughout pretty much the rest of this configuration for the most part. But anyways, that's the correct setup for that. And we're going to say return to record types. Click on that. Okay, we can fill out some host information, some information about our network here. So again, it's myserver.dom. And the hardware is a virtual machine, and the operating system is Linux. So I put in a virtual machine for my hardware, and for my operating system, I put in Linux Red Hat. And of course I did myserver.dom again. You'll notice it automatically fills in the dot for me. That's why we're leaving it off. If you don't leave it off, you'll get a problem. So you need to leave it off because it'll automatically fill in the dot for you. Alright, we're going to click on return to record types. Okay, let's fill in some text so that we have some information about our DNS server. Alright, again, it's going to be myserver.dom. And the message is something like welcome to, instead of saying localhost DNS, let's say myserver.dom DNS. Heck, if we wanted to, we could even say ns1 dot. If we wanted to, it's probably not a good idea. I don't know, since that's not a good idea. Let's just say welcome to my server. Welcome to my DNS server. I don't know, whatever you want to say, right? Doesn't really matter. It's just a message. so it's not going to hurt our configuration one way or another what you say here. Alright, so I'm going to click on create, and there we go, it is now created. Now we're going to click on return to record types. Awesome. So responsible person, again the name here is going to be myserver.dom. Email address, this would be student at myserver.dom. Okay, and text record name, you could say something like administrator. So the administrator of the system is in charge, or you could say your name here or something like that, so they know who's responsible. Click create, and we create that entry. Now we can say return to record types. Awesome. We need to do another one. We need to set up our reverse, so this way we can go from an IP address to a name. And remember that our IP address is, well, for me it's 192.168.1.110, but you're going to put in the IP address that you got from the ifconfig a moment ago for your bridge setup. So go ahead and put that in. Host name, again, it's going to be myserver server here .dom. And click to create, and automatically filled the .m for me. So we define return to record types, and then we're going to say IPv6, which is our reverse one. Now I'm not going to be able to remember this one for obvious reasons. If you're able to remember the entire address for an IPv6, congratulations, because most of them are like really complicated. So, but okay, so I'm back here in my ifconfig. Remember, I typed in ifconfig like this, and over here we can see the IPv6 address for this computer. So if I go ahead and select it like this, I can hit Control-Shift-C to copy it. Again, that is Control-Shift-C to copy that. And then we're going to click on this, and then we're going to come back over to here. Nope, wrong. Sorry, over here. And then I'm going to click in address, and I'm going to click paste. And then that gives me my IPv6 address. Just leave it on yes. You really don't have to do anything else. Default's fine. Click create. And bam, that one's created. And you notice it put the dot at the end of the DOM again. So we're good to go there. Click return to record types. And that should be everything. We have everything that really matters. Some of this other stuff is optional, really, like public key is optional, location is optional, service address is optional, sender permitted from is optional, well-known service is optional, name alias is optional. So you get the idea. But we do want to click apply configuration. Now, you may not have this. If you don't, you have a start bind up here. You need to click that, and you can click apply configuration. Once you apply your configuration, it is actually set up. And at this point, you should have all your records like this. Just take some screenshots of this, or if you can get the whole thing in one screenshot, that works. Take one screenshot of this. I don't need any other screenshots except for seeing it work and run with the dig commands. So if you get this right here, then I know that you did it right for the configuration. Okay, with that said, let's click on our activities and let's test it out. Now, in order to make this work, we are going to have to do something. We're going to have to do our system ctl space enable space named dot service. Okay, and then we're going to have system ctl start named dot service. And then just for good measure, let's do restart. Just in case it is already running, do a restart to make sure that it runs. Okay, now with that done, the magic should happen where I say dig, and then I can say my server, if I did everything right, dom here, and I should be able to dig it. And when I do, I get all this awesome information. And this worked out great. So I did everything right. And we can see a lot of information coming from this. So it says that a query was done, one query, and it came back with one answer for one authority and additional 2. So what's going on here? It says myserver.dom is an internet address with an IPv4 address for it. So the answer section here is myserver.dom and then this number here. And then we have our internet address, and we have our A, which for internet IPv4 address, and then it gives the IPv4 address. All right, and then it says again, that's your answer section. This was your question section up here. So it asked, hey, what was myserver.dom? It's the internet address, and then it was for IPv4 was the question. And that's what we got when we typed in dig. So when we said dig myserver.dom, that's what we were asking. So that's basically saying they asked for this, which is us. That's what this dig command did right here. It did the asking. All right, so here comes back our answer though. myserver.dom. Sorry. Didn't mean to move that around. All right. myserver.dom. There's the IN for internet address, A for IPv4 address, and then the IPv4 address 192.168.1.110. And then the authority section, myserver.dom, IN for internet, NS is our name server, which is our DNS server, ns1.myserver.dom. And then ns.myserver.dom is an internet address with A, which is IPv4 address, 192.168.1.110. So again, it's the same. Of course, that's what we wanted. And it had 0 milliseconds because it came off of this server, so the lookup was rather quick. But check it out, we can do some other ones too. Like we can go in here and say www.myserver.com, and it will find it. So check it out. There's www.myserver.dom. Another one we can do is we could dig mail.myserver.dom, and that worked. And then we could also do dig ns1.myserver.dom, and then that one also works. So besides that, we can also dig in reverse. So that way we can go from an IP address to a name. So if I do 192.168.1.110, for me, again, you're going to put the IP address you got from your ifconfig. And it gets me to look up on it. So it says, okay, so we get in reverse. It says, okay, here was a question. This is why we did the -x, so we wouldn't have to write it like this. You note that the IP address is backwards because you read it from right to left. And so dot is the beginning, it's the root server from ICANN. But anyways, that's not important for this. IN for internet, and this is pointer. This means going backwards. We're doing what's called a reverse lookup. Alright, and then we have our address, ARPA, again, like we expect, IN, start of authority, and then here's our address, and it points out to that. So, really didn't get much information back, but 3 seconds, and it worked. Okay, and other command we can run is host, and we can do it myserver.dom, and it comes back. So 192.168.1.110 also has an IPv6 address of this, and then here's the mail server also. So there's all 3 records, like we expect. Screenshot this, and you're good to go. Alright, that's it. That's how you set up a DNS server. Thank you very much.